call our meeting to order of NLA today, Thursday, February 2025, 6 p.m. for everybody to be by
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Director Bañuelos,
Here.
Director Barajas,
Here.
Director Collins,
Here.
Director Jones.
Here.
Director Lopez is absent. Director Sandoval is absent. Alternate Vice President De La Rosa is absent. Vice President Church
Here.
and President Silva.
Thank you. We want to ask if there are translation services.
Sure. Servicios de traducción están disponibles en persona o a través de Zoom, seleccionando el icono de globo en la parte de abajo de la pantalla.
Now, all the board members that can actually review tonight's agenda. If so, I get
So moved.
Second. Aye.
Thank you.
Just a reminder that we're having a composting workshop this Saturday at the garden at Sun Street. So please come and join us if you're interested in learning how to compost. Thank you.
Scissors.
No, Madam President.
Any comments of any of our programs?
Got a couple. One, I just want to make mention that I am not able to be here at both the April and the May board meetings. I'm going to try to get my alternate to come to the April one. But May, it's a big conflict because that's our fair and both my alternate and I will have duties at the fair. So wanted to give a heads up on that. And then I also I got to recognize today we had the Trash and Show fundraiser in King City and our in-house model, Julia, did an awesome job, and our in-house design folks did an awesome job as well. That was really cool. And I know at an upcoming meeting, we'll have a picture up here at an upcoming meeting, right? But well done. Kudos to all involved. That was awesome.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No comment.
I want to echo what Rob said. I was at the trash and field myself. I think everyone was one, in all the years that they had it, and it boggles my mind every year to see the creativity that people put forth and reduce them. Did not disappoint. It like I think Nancy saved us for last, and it was. It's amazing what they can do with all the recycle parts. So thank you everybody who took part in creating that. I'll look forward to figuring that in this next trash and show. Moving on to public comments. Okay. From the audience on items which are not on tonight's agenda. The public may comment on scheduled items. The board considers them. Speakers are limited to 3 months at the discretion of each chair. Is there anyone who has any public comment? I don't think it was not. Seeing nobody rushing into the podium, I'll move on to first item is our discussion on our strategic planning workshop. Patrick?
Yes. So I was saving my comments for this one. So as you all know, we typically try to have a strategic planning workshop at least once a year. Normally, like the last one we had was in December of 23. This year we did not hold it because of some uncertainties around the board makeup with the elections and a lot of the new appointments were not in place yet in time for us to schedule something for December. So we held off, and this point we're looking at late spring to have a meeting. The good news is right now is we have a fairly light agenda for May and June of this year. And we're intentionally keeping it light right now until we decide what date we will have that strategic planning meeting. Our intent is whichever month we decide to have it in, whichever date, we would have a very light initial agenda. We would start the meeting at 5 o'clock. If there are any business items, consent items that have to be done, that gives us a little time to do that. And then move right into the strategic planning session, probably within a half hour. And then basically go from 5:30 till 8. So we're planning on a 2.5 hour strategic planning session. This year we've decided, and you're going to be hearing from me a little bit later on tonight, that we're really going to, I think, sort of wrap up what I would call the first volume of the authority's history. And that's the birth of the authority and sort of the growth we've gone through in the last 27 years to get to where we are today. Can really start talking about what the next chapter looks like. And so if you saw the agenda item and read in the back, you saw the 24 priorities. The last of the items that were on that priority list, and those are the items that are in green on that summary of strategic planning priorities, was a 5 and 10 year outlook. We're going to talk about that at the end of the meeting tonight. And that really is going to be our segue into strategic planning this year. Start looking forward on to the issues that we're going to be dealing with, both the positive things and also the challenges, because there are a lot of challenges in our industry, not specific to the authority, but specific to the industry in California that we're facing from regulatory changes, climate change, other things. So we'll talk a little bit about that, one, to bring everybody up to speed on our history that haven't been with the board before, sort of know how we got to where we are, talk a little bit about our successes. So this is really the segue into strategic planning. So what I'm really would like to entertain tonight is really a discussion around the appropriate date. Normally it would be our normal regular board meetings would be either May 15th or June 26th this year. Those are two potential dates we would first look at. We have one optional date we've confirmed for May 22nd. But ultimately, we could have it just about any day and call it a special meeting and just cancel the regular scheduled meeting for that month and move this to a different time slot that works for everybody's calendar, or at least as many as possible. So I think tonight we just want to sort of look, if you have your calendars with you, sort of give us some feedback on the three initial dates we proposed. If we don't seem to have a good consensus with the majority of board members available for one of those three dates, then we can start to talk about other alternatives, either in the month of May or June. We know June is a busy month for most of you. That's when you're doing your own budgets. So we could look at early June, or we could look at, sometime later in June, when maybe after your budgets have been adopted. So with that, I'll just sort of open the floor for general discussion. If anybody has preferences on any of these dates, or I know, Rob, you've already told us that the May meetings, you're not available for the regular May meeting, but you could make the following Thursday. Thursdays usually, and the reason our meetings are on Thursdays is because between all of you, you take up the other, outside of a Friday, which I don't think anybody wants to have a strategic planning meeting on a Friday evening, but the rest of you all have your normal council meetings, usually on Mondays, Tuesdays, or Wednesdays. So we would probably first look at Thursdays being your potential available date outside of the ones we have here. So happy to.
Go ahead, Glenn.
To jump in, just because since Rob says he's not available the 15th, but is the 22nd, I felt it would be appropriate to say I'm not available the 22nd. And the 15th, I have a Hitchcock Road Animal Services meeting that can go to 5 o'clock or so that would be a problem. For Thursday, the 26th in June, Board Supervisors is doing performance evaluations that day, which, I'm looking forward to being a meeting all day on that and then coming down to a strategic reserve, strategic discussions, but 22nd is definitely out. The 15th and the 26th I could do, but I might be late onto those as well. That's what it's.
Can I make a comment too?
Thank you. Erica, are you taking down all the details with her? Okay, Eva?
Yes, so the week of the 15th is always on my birthday week, and so I'll be out of town. On the 22nd, I am available, but Glenn, you might not be available. So I mean, I know it might be too soon for the May 8th. I mean, we can kind of throw that out there. Because if we push it more to June, I'd rather just, let's try to work on that May 8th. Because that's Memorial Weekend on the 20th, and that's like a long weekend for all of us, and I know we get busy. But I wanted to see if we can try to just meet on May 8th. I mean, I know it's already in the month, but I don't know.
On my end of things, I could not do May 8th because I have a conflicting meeting with the Salinas Valley Groundwater Sustainability Agency. We have a meeting that day at that time. The May dates work for me, and so do both of the June dates. But just would prefer not to do the May 22nd one. I have a sister that's graduating high school, and that's kind of graduation week for most schools,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want to miss that.
Okay, Rob, you already gave us yours. Marcy?
Probably with the other one, but I'm still wanting to.
The June 26th is not good for you. Okay. My turn, huh? So with regards to the May 8th, I already have something on the calendar and I paid a lot of money for that, so that's not good for me. I could be available for the 15th, but again, like Rob, I'm associated with the fair. The 22nd is open for me. June 26th, probably not good because that's my anniversary. Probably shouldn't schedule a meeting that night, but I mean, I am flexible. Is there another day of the week, maybe? How about May 29th?
I was gonna ask the 29th. I mean, I think it's
How does May
after,
29th
I
look
think it's
for
after the
everybody?
fair, after,
It's after the fair. It's kind of in between
Memorial.
graduations. How does
I
that
can be
look for you?
flexible the 29th.
Tuesdays are generally problematic.
This is a
because-
Thursday,
That's a Thursday.
Yeah.
That's
29th.
Thursday.
May 29th.
Wow.
The other.
Okay, oh, that's why I'm seeing that happening. Okay, I saw the Board of Supervisors on
Yeah.
something, so that was a Tuesday.
Oh,
No, actually, we're doing budget, with budget meetings all day, so I
On-
don't know.
May 29th.
Yes, on May 29th.
Okay.
I mean, we'll be done by around 5, but again, I kind of run the same problem I do with the other 2 dates. I have a meetings at 5 and kind of throws things, makes it a little difficult.
Sure.
I'm open
How does it
to,
look for you on the 29th? I mean, good for you? Good for you?
29th,
May 29th.
29th works.
Marcy?
And if I may,
Okay.
I could probably speak for Supervisor Lopez on some of these things. too.
Understanding. And then obviously your any alternates from the county would probably also be affected, just saying, so. Unless you want to do the survey via email, I mean, I don't, other than trying to, and I don't want to go to a Saturday, which we used to do in the olden days.
Mhm.
I don't want to take up anybody's weekend.
Well, we can send out a survey, as long as everybody completes it. So Erica doesn't have to spend too much time tracking everybody down, but I would just propose, we'll have to check availability of this room, but we have the alternative of using the Ed Center also. Especially getting to May and June, it won't be so cold out, there, so.
Could I just, is there a certain council members who can't make Wednesdays, like the Wednesday, the 21st? Is there, I mean, I have that day completely open. Oh, sorry, month shouldn't matter, right? How about May?
I have a heritage board meeting
Okay.
and I'm the president, so that's good for me.
Yeah, and on the Salinas side of things, we haven't finalized our city appointments until our March meeting, so we won't know what other committees will be serving on and what those times will be.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, we're a fun crowd.
I better give Dennis a call.
on the 21st week, I have a city council meeting.
All right.
Oh, Wednesday.
Yeah, 1st and 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Erica? Go ahead
We're gonna
and
give-
survey everybody.
Well, we'll
We
survey.
tried.
We'll survey all the Thursdays in May and June, and then we'll look at the Wednesdays that you don't have a council,
Okay.
don't have a council meeting.
Is there any possibility that we could just do it during the board meeting? Could we delay?
That's what we're gonna try to do.
That's what we're trying to do with the May and June. Do with those dates report.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed
The
that.
May regular meeting would be canceled and we would create a special meeting. Yes,
Sorry, missed
that's
that.
okay.
Aren't you gonna bite on my burrito?
That's okay. Yeah,
Yeah, especially, we're just gonna add an hour onto the normal board meeting and meet at 5 and.
okay. You have your direction?
Yes, to confirm, it's Thursdays is probably the best day for everybody. Maybe some Wednesdays, depending on the city meetings.
With the exception of the May 22nd is not good for Jose Luis, right?
Yes,
That's
I-
graduation week.
Yeah,
Well,
I have the
Okay.
names of who can and can't.
Okay,
We're still gonna put all the, we're gonna still put all those dates out. because
Right.
We may not be able to get everybody and
Okay.
we'll have to pick the date that. we
Fair
have the
enough.
Best response
Yeah.
for, so.
okay, good. Thank you, everybody.
Quick question. Does any mornings work? Thursdays?
I
I
can be
don't know if
flexible.
Thursday morning.
Thursday mornings, does
Yeah.
work for anybody?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
okay. Just checking.
okay,
I can be flexible too,
okay.
Thursday morning.
And then, Marcy, you have an alternate? I mean, I would prefer that the board members attend this because it's more important that the regular board members attend this and get familiar with it. But, okay, thank you. Okay, we're good? Good. So do I need to ask for public comments on this?
It's not required.
Okay. Does anyone from the public have any comments with regards to this topic? Seeing nobody rush to the podium, I would say no. So thank you. Erica, you have your direction on that? We'll move on to our consent agenda. And do I have, is there anyone from the public or the board who'd like to pull one of the items in our consent for further discussion? If not, can I get a motion for action?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is it?
Second.
Thank you, Eva. Eva, right?
Mhm.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve our consent agenda for tonight. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have item number 9, presentation, the recycling recognition. Staff report, please.
Right. Good afternoon. I'm Jana Falk, the recycling coordinator from the Resource Recovery Department. And I have the pleasure tonight of recognizing the Alisal School District for their exemplary completion of implementing 1383 food scrap collections in all of their schools. So, as you see here, there's 12 schools in the Alisal School District,
Wow.
making it the largest in the city of Salinas. And they have implemented 1383 food scrap collection in their kitchens with their staff and all their cafeterias. So the district has enrollment of about 7,700 students, meaning they typically serve over 7,000 breakfasts and second breakfasts, serve over 7,000 lunches, and most of their sites serve supper as well, if not all. So that's over 20,000 meals a day. So saying that they implemented food scraps is a pretty big deal. So unfortunately, Sarah, our school specialist, couldn't be here tonight to present on the implementation process. So I get to brag about how streamlined and comprehensive it is. So up on the slide is an overview of the steps of implementation. Sarah works closely with the haulers for each school, and they attend many of these as well. So first, Sarah meets on site with the school and district admin to make a plan. Then all members involved on site meet to build the plan and tailor it for each site so that it works most effectively for them. Sarah trains the green teams of students, so they also have ownership over the program. And she'll also train on-site staff and all of the teachers so that they know what's coming and they can get their questions answered. On implementation day, SVR staff attend and assist with setup helping the green team members understand their roles and assist students with learning the new process. After implementation, Sarah visits the school to ensure that things are going smoothly and if they have any issues to work out. And as noted, it takes over about 30 hours of staff time, of SVR's time, just to implement one school. So it's a pretty big undertaking, and that doesn't include hauler and school and staff time. So every time staff needs a shining example of 1383 implementation or how agencies can have productive, respectful, and meaningful relationships with school districts, we always find examples in our relationship with the LSL Unified School District. LSL has gone above and beyond by continuing to come up with innovative ways to push their sustainability initiatives forward and move to the front of the class. Very soon, LSL Unified will begin working with SVR on step 2 of 1383, which is the edible food recovery portion. And Irene and her staff have already begun to think of ways to make this happen in a streamlined and efficient manner. Working with staff from the LSL Unified School District is always a pleasure, and their ideas and enthusiasm are contagious. We are eager to continue working with the LSL School District for many years to come on all the projects that are brought our way. So I'll open it up to Irene Vargas, if she'd like to say anything else and present you with the recognition for the LSL Union School District.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this honor. I would like to really give many thanks to Jenna and her team. They have been awesome, setting the example, training and educating the students and the teachers, because it takes the whole school community to do this, not just nutrition services, although we do supply the equipment that they need to do this. And we train our staff, our custodial staff, like she said, the students, and they were part of a video for a training that the kids got to do in the classroom with the teachers. It was awesome. I can't give them many thanks on this, because when they asked me how are we going to do this, who's going to train the students? I had no idea. And then I met some of the team. I go, you're the link that I need. We had the equipment. We just didn't know who was going to train the students, because it's really something that they take control of, and they understand, and they're educated on why we do what we do and why we recycle food. So it's been well received with all the schools, and it has been a project because we started it before COVID, and then we had to stop, and then we had to start up again. And we're still working on many ways to, like, reusable sports, milk dispensers for the cartons, so that, because of all the garbage that it does take, all the room that it takes. So there's still many things to do, but without their support, we couldn't have done this. So thank you so much, Rehab District. Thank you.
Great work.
We're available for questions or comments, but
Do any of the board members have any comments or questions?
I'd
Eva?
like to make a comment. Just want to say thank you. I mean, it takes a village to put all this together, and just the excitement of the kids, like, what is that? Oh, where does this go? I mean, I know the kids are just excited in doing that and learning as they go. And then Mandy, you showing like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, I want to be there too. But, thank you for doing that. And, and wow, great job. Thank you.
Any other board member have? Glenn? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. Creating the school district, especially the youth service department, because they're the ones that are something that want to that appreciated. But it's nice to do it. Yeah, thank you for the I actually will look like connected with it.
Glenn?
So I just want to also thank you and everybody involved into this. I mean, I look at these kids and see them engaged, and this is just so basic. I mean, they understand it. They're going to learn it. They're going to do it for the rest of their lives. You don't change the world by getting old guys like Patrick and I to change. But you change it by introducing them and you know, and you can just see that they're interested and it's. No, I can't, you know, the accolades are just, you know, you can't put a limit to them. It's really great to see. Thanks.
And I, for one, would like to see the video of the kids engaged in this. So maybe we can get that. Okay. Thank you for all you do too, to educate the kids. And like Glenn said, what they start in school, they're just going to carry on at home and it'll just be second nature. It won't be hard for them to do. So thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make any comments? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, picture time. Take a picture with her.
Usually we go right over here.
We normally line up here in the center. That's what I was gonna say. Okay, that's perfect. Ready, 1, 2, and 3. Got it, thank you.
A lot of times during council meetings, I stand in here because I'm a little taller up here. Awesome. We need to do that. But Erica, get back to her seat. Okay, item 10. A resolution approving an adjustment to the capital improvement budget in the amount of $150,000 for the North County Transfer Station project. Staff report.
Good evening, Directors. Brian Kennedy, Engineering and Environmental Compliance Manager tonight. Going to update you on the progress on our Crazy Horse transfer station. So some project milestones, back in last February, about a year ago, we awarded a design contract to Jared Miller and Associates to design the transfer station at Crazy Horse along with a couple other projects. And out of that, in September, the board approved a preliminary design that they came up with and instructed staff to move forward with the design of the project. And then last December, we met with the county with the Development Review Committee, which is a group of different departments within the county permitting agency that you meet, you describe the project, and they develop a series of requirements that they have when you submit the permit. Next slide. And so, kind of sorry we asked for that. This is what they required. We had to provide a site plan, floor plan for the buildings, a site elevation plan. We have a grading plan, stormwater plan, a tree removal plan, erosion control plan. We have to do a CEQA initial study, traffic circulation plan, landscape plan, lighting plan, environmental health plan, entrance design plan, construction management plan, staking and flagging plan, and then of course the fire sprinkler plan. So some of these, the ones on the left side are complete or near completion. Some of them are done as part of the design of the facility. On the right, most of these are in progress at certain different stages. Next slide, please. So like any project, there's potential obstacles. CEQA is never slam dunk, right? We have a draft initial study almost complete. It's going to go for review internally and review with our CEQA attorneys. The site's had many CEQA studies done over the years. So, and it was a solid waste facility since 1936. So it's not, it shouldn't be that controversial, but it's got to go out to circulation and review. And you never know, it could be additional items that need to be examined as a result of that circulation. Part of the project is improving Crazy Horse Canyon Road in front of the facility to accommodate the traffic issues there. So we've sent Public Works a preliminary design for approval and comment. And after that, once the permit's approved, to go through with a encroachment permit, road improvement designs, engineered plans, and then of course, we have to determine what the cost of that's going to be and if there's any cost sharing. So that's going to take some time on this. The next obstacle could be the building foundation design. The site's going to be built, the foundations are going to be built on a part of the landfill that's not technically solid waste, but it is like a C&D and there was some debris buried there. So we have done the geotechnical investigation. We did find that it's not native soil. So we have to take that data and we have to get it to an engineer and design a foundation for these buildings. And that could get tricky depending on how the footings have to look and how deep they have to bore. Plus, we have to get all those approval through the water board, who is in charge of the closed site. And then the final obstacle potentially is the fire sprinkler and water storage design. We met with North County Fire. They gave us the criteria that we have to follow, and it's going to require significant water storage. How much, we don't know. We're still working that. We have a design engineer working on that. But if it is a significant amount of money, that could be, or excuse me, significant amount of water, that could be significant money to construct a water storage tank. Next slide. So the next steps, next month, we hope to have the fire sprinkler design and the water storage requirements. So we'll know more then what we're up against with that. In April, we should have the results of the geotechnical investigation and the foundation engineering, having more clarity on what the foundation is going to look like. In April, we hope to have the initial study back to the board for review and adoption. Patrick told me on June 3rd, I have to have the submit the application to the county. So I'm doing it on June 3rd. So we're going to hopefully submit that in June. And then in the fall of 2025, hopefully have a lot of clarity around the road improvements. Again, a lot of that's dependent upon county requirements and what they're willing to do as far as accommodating us to do the work or sharing it, the cost. So we got to work through that. Next slide. So what we're asking for this evening is a resolution to adjust our CIP budget. Thank you, Ray. So these are the additional costs we think we're going to incur in this portion of the project for the tank plans, geotechnical work, traffic study. You can see them lined out here. There's contingencies in here. So this is I'm comfortable with these numbers, but tonight we're asking for adoption of a resolution for raising it. Anyhow, any questions?
Okay, I'm just gonna have a real quick comment. Brian, just give me a second. Have the new board members been advised of the Crazy Horse land, the transfer station? Okay, oh, good. I didn't want to sit here assuming that they knew and not knowing that you did know, so thank you. Are there any questions from any of the board members?
I know the concern, one of the obstacles here is water, and possibly with the tank. What kind of costs are we talking about there? If I don't know where we're at in the discussions with North County Fire on this, but what are they suggesting and what could be the cost on the upper end of what they're suggesting?
Well, we've seen, so it's interesting. There's an NFPA code that for rural sites that allows for water storage in lieu of being connected to a hydrant or a municipal water system. And there's a calculation that determines that, but there's several variables that play into that calculation. Building style has to do with flammability of the materials that are inside. So that's kind of where we don't really know. I've heard a low of 70,000 and I've heard a high of almost 700,000. So what the fire department has said is give us your proposal. So we need somebody who does this, who can engage with them, who's experts at this. But so that's an unknown cost. But it's a bit, even if it's 200,000 gallons, 200,000 gallon steel water tank is significant cost.
So and I raised this question a meeting or two ago when we were talking about I guess it was last meeting with the fire suppression system in down Johnson Canyon. And I think you had mentioned that you get 2 or 3 battery, fires probably a week that happen out of there. So I assume it's probably going to be a similar situation you expect here. Are there other kind of fire incidents that turn up very regularly than that? I'm just not I'm trying to get, I guess, a gist of how often you have to really use Something to put out fires
Well, I think
and how,
that-
how major?
The lithium batteries are the common ones. In the old days, it still happen. And we don't always know what starts the fire. And they're always little, right? A little small, right? It's not like it's big conflagration. We'll see a little smoke and the guys will go in and they'll break the pile up and they'll take care of it. So we don't always know what's causing it. But historically, before lithium batteries, it was typically either someone putting their old coals that weren't cooled out from a barbecue in their garbage. Or it was a combination of pool chemicals, oxidizers, like hypochlorite. When it mixes with oils or organic materials, it can actually spontaneously combust. So that's the other source of fires. So those are typical ones, but what we found is the little ones that pop up all the time are typically lithium batteries. And they're all little batteries. They're not like Moss Landing, we're not, get those kind of batteries in, but
Yeah, no, that's okay. We don't want any of those.
No.
So I guess my suggestion, and I'm just trying to find a possible path, maybe in case this ends up on the higher end. Since you're talking about smaller batteries, is there any other fire suppression system that could be used in addition to water that might lower the cost of a huge tank?
it would be the same fire system we approved for.
Yeah,
How
we
much was
approached
that?
them with that concept and they weren't willing to waive the standard requirement.
Oh, they're not willing.
And it
So
was,
he's saying in
I think
lieu
what he
of-
said was, this is really bad timing to ask for any kind of waiver. He was still an insert commander for that fire you're speaking of.
So you have gone down that path.
Yeah,
We could
we
have that
suggested
as
that.
a supplement, a smaller version of that in the area where we would expect to see that overnight.
And that's what I'm just wondering if we look at the cost, if we brought in something like this, if it was. If it would do the cost of what we bring in for a supplement, could it means that they'll reduce the size of the primary, and is there a possible advantage that we could come out on the plus side?
The primary's got to cover all the usable
Oh,
structure.
Okay,
But the reality is inside the transfer station, the area where you're gonna see a fire after hours is gonna be limited to a little bit of garbage that comes in at the end of the day, because we've moved most of it out. So you could have a smaller version of what we have at Halone stationed in a spot where that would basically take care of that small pile of overnight garbage. And be able to handle putting out fires on a on-call basis. Yeah.
Any other questions from board members? Rob?
Thanks for asking that question about the water. I was gonna ask on combination of the traffic circulation plan as well as all the road improvements. And I know there's multiple parties and lots of moving parts on that. At what point, like, there's been some preliminary discussions on potential cost sharing on that, right? And when do the substantive conversations happen on the cost sharing with the county, and do we have an answer to that now?
I think as we get to the end of the permit phase.
Okay.
Right, we
Right.
brought that up when we've had met with them at the site. And I think the general sense was, if you're looking for cost sharing, this isn't gonna happen in any kind of a timeline that we're hoping for. Because it's not budgeted, it would take, it would be years. But if we wanted to move it forward, if we paid, unilaterally, it would.
But we had
Move
that
after.
baked into our preliminary cost estimates already, because they had given us just a back of the napkin estimate for that, about 750,000. Is what the public works engineer told us they thought those road improvements would be.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board member? Eva?
I want to ask, Glenn, thank you for asking that question, because I was going to ask in regards to the water storage tank. Now, we don't know tentatively, the cost or the amount of the considered tank, but just to kind of save some time or some money, wouldn't we want to consider budgeting that into the 150,000, or maybe wouldn't we consider budgeting a little bit, like a possible tentative amount for a storage tank, of water?
Sorry, I'm not used to talking. The entire construction project is going to be $9 million. So once we got a permit and all the plans, and we would ask for the large allocation, which would include construction of the tank. right now, we're just trying to get through the preliminary CEQA and the required work to get through the permitting process.
Okay,
So we're estimating, we think it'll be 150,000. We're hoping with the little contingency we put in there, there's enough. Because I don't like coming back asking for money for the same thing over and over again. But yeah, we're just trying to get through the preliminary work. The tank would be part of the building site construction.
okay.
Yeah, we should have more clarity on that,
Yeah.
midsummer, for sure.
And the preliminary is going to set for, what was he to meet, asking to do the preliminaries is gonna be in a couple of months? Couple
Well,
of
after
weeks?
submitted, then they have 30 days
30
to
days, okay,
review them to be complete and correct, and then it goes from there.
okay. That's my,
And,
Is it-
Maybe about a year from now.
yeah, okay,
yeah, and part of the
Thank you.
budget request is actually to do the design and engineering for the fire suppression system.
okay,
So we should actually have an estimate probably in the next couple of months. So we'll know that early on. It won't be, end of the year. It'll be in the next few months.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What's it?
Yes. What was the original amount budgeted for this? I know it's $150,000 increase, but what was the actual original?
I think it was, well, it was split between 3 different projects. Was it 100,000 for
100.
Crazy Horse?
Sorry. I don't.
I believe it was 100 originally.
Sorry. There's North County Trust, 150. It was. And is this the first increase that's being requested for this particular project? Yes, the original request was just for preliminary design work. And that was based on our quote from JRMA. So when that was awarded, we initially put in 100,000, the bid was 50,000 more. And this is as we continue to proceed through the work, we will have more requests, but yes, this is the first time we've requested something since we did the initial preliminary design work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from any of the board members? If not, we need to recommend action. So do I hear anyone from oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone from the public who has any comment? Come forward, please, to the podium.
Hello. Yeah. New to this, so apologies. But I will attempt to contribute with regards to, I heard that small fires happen and they're battery related and they're the most common. I'm assuming there's been an influx because most stores sell disposable vapes, which include lithium batteries. And as a consumer, as a citizen, there's not really a straight out way to dispose of batteries. Like the only thing I've seen is at the library or Ace, and they don't even do that anymore. The most easy way for me to dispose is like oil, where you could just leave it on the side. But there's nothing apparent to the consumer, and the consumer, I'll speak for myself, is doesn't think, very lazy. So given with the influx of disposable vapes and more disposable items with batteries, I'm assuming that your data shows that there's more fires given recent times. So, apologies if this is off topic, but that would be my recommendation would be some sort of easy way for the consumer to dispose of batteries to lower the commonality of it. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate your input. Do we need to get his name? Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for action. Thank you, Rob. Lynn, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve this resolution of 150,000 for the North County Transfer Station. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passed. Next item on our agenda. Preliminary budget for fiscal year 2025-26. Staff report.
Okay, first I'd like to start by apologizing. The running joke is because this presentation gets given 6 times, it gets faster and faster every time. I know we have 2 board members who haven't heard this before, so I will be conscious of that. And if I go too fast, feel free to throw something or
Here's my water.
yeah. But this is my 4th run at this presentation, so. Okay, so this is the preliminary budget for 2025-26. We came to the board, both DC and the board, with initial budget direction in January. But in reality, the budget was fully cooked by then for all intents and purposes. So the budget assumptions are status quo operations, so no changes in operations in the coming year. I know we just talked about Crazy Horse, but that'll be at least a couple years down the line. So budget summary, the budget as presented is balanced. So we are looking at, and the number on this slide is wrong, but 27,974,700 in revenue, with total operating and capital expenditures along with set asides of 27, just shy of 28 million, leaving a very small balance for reserves of just under 16,000. Next slide. So the bulk of our increases are payroll and staff related. We have COLAs of 2.8%, which is an increase of 213,000 to the budget. We're budgeting for 10% in medical premium increases, which is an additional 162,000. Scheduled merit increases for employees who are not at the top step of 152,000. Workers' comp premiums, we're projecting an increase of 15% of 100,000, and then there's a bunch of other minor adjustments for other taxes and benefits that total 98,000. So the total payroll and benefit increases to 733,000. And we are requesting, next slide, 2 added positions. We're requesting a field operations supervisor, so the fully loaded cost, that's salary and benefits, and it is fully benefited. The benefits could come in lower depending what benefits they choose, but we do budget for the highest amount just to ensure that we have adequate budget. So fully loaded is 212,000. So this field operations supervisor would assist with the operations of the 2 South County sites, so Johnson Canyon, Nashville, and King City transfer station. Since we took over that site, traffic has doubled, staff has doubled. We've added operations so that one supervisor running that entire operation, I believe he has 30, Caesar's not here, so he has 30 employees that he supervises. So it gets a little stressed, and then with an added supervisor, we will actually give us the ability to have coverage on the weekends, which are now busier, especially with Sun Street closing and more traffic coming this way. In addition, we're asking for a human resources technician. Same thing, since we've added HR, actually the admin and finance staff has not added a position since 2007, which was my first promotion. But staff has doubled since then, and my HR supervisor has trouble taking a day off. She's today or tomorrow for vacation and spent half of the day dealing with an issue that happened out at the site. So it'd be nice to get her some support to help her out so she can enjoy a day off every once in a while. So that means the total payroll increases are $1 million. Other requested increases are 100,000 for facility and equipment insurance. We were told to expect 10 to 15% increases in our insurance, depending on the coverage. So that's total 100,000. 100,000 for equipment maintenance. We have a lot of high-end yellow iron and trucks on the road. So just to keep them maintained with cost of parts and everything increasing. And then we are projecting a tonnage increase, and we have set asides for closure, post-closure, and future landfill expansion that's based on tonnage. So increasing that tonnage automatically increases the set aside by 64,000. Increases of fuel, 60,000, organics processing, 55,000, and that's a expected CPI increase to our vendor out there. And then all other increases and decreases are 100,000, but the biggest number in that is a $30,000 increase for a fire suppression system that we are in the process of installing at Hello Road. So that's the monitoring tool. So our CIP enclosure budget, like a couple years ago, we started increasing it all by 2.5% to 3%. So this year we're increasing our CIP budget by 3%. So that's a total of 92,000. So we set aside money for capital ahead of time. So the landfill requires continual landfill gas improvements. And as I mentioned, we have a lot of high-end yellow iron. So we allocate money every year so that when it's time to replace that equipment, we have money already allocated as CIP. That way we don't have to borrow money for any purchases. So it's we used to call it pay as you go, but it's more like save as you go. So that way when the expenses come, the money's already there. And then the new cell construction at the bottom, that is part of the increases. That's actually part of the operating budget. So we set aside $5 a ton for cell construction. So every time that comes in landfill, we set aside $5. And then it gets allocated to the CIP budget after the year closes, and we have the exact number. Am I going too fast, too slow? Okay. Next slide. This is just a pretty slide. We'll be in year 4 of the refinance of the debt service schedule, which is 3.1 million a year, and the final payment is August 1st, 2030. And that is getting closer and closer. Okay, so the budget as presented does require rate adjustments. AB 939 requires an increase of 212,000, and that just keeps that program fully funded. Most of those increases are payroll related. Organics program requires an increase of $3. So we have the CIP for the vendor and also some payroll and other costs with the depackager and the other part of the organics programs up there. So to keep that fully funded, it is a $3 increase. A transportation surcharge, we need to start increasing that. Our cost is slightly higher than that, but a small increase to start getting it to where it needs to be. And then 225 rate increase of solid waste. And as Jose Luis asked last month, I just view back into the number. So we know we want to keep the other programs fully funded. And in order to fully fund the budget, we need a $2.25 increase to $67. And then just for reference, San Benito's at 64, Monterey Regional is at 77, and Santa Cruz is at 98, which are our local jurisdictions. So the revenue increases, the solid waste rate increase, it's solid waste and related items, because there's other items that are tied to that solid waste, such as C&D, soil, biosolids, all have the same rate. The increase would be 522,000. The solid waste tonnage increase would be 486,000. And I'm sorry, I'm not looking at you, but you've seen this 3 times. So hoping you don't feel ignored. You're gonna present it for me next month? AB 939 rate increase that I mentioned of 212,000, and organics rate increase would have an additional 143,000. And then other revenue adjustments, while there are some increases, our investment earnings we're expecting those to start decreasing. So we have an investment earning decrease of 200,000 built in the budget, with other items increasing 105,000, which are minor. So total revenue increasing 1,267,000. So what does that mean for the ratepayer? I'm just going to pause and let everyone look at your jurisdiction. I apologize, the county still hasn't provided the information to try to calculate that. I've had Elia reach out, I've had Mandy reach out, and I don't know. So depending on your jurisdiction and the service level, we're looking at increase between 0.4% and 1.3%. This is just our portion of the rates. The haulers will have their own increases, and city franchise fees would be part of it as well. Everyone good?
So where are we at?
Huh?
Interstate consolidated.
You're Tri-Cities,
Tri-Cities, right? Okay, Tri-Cities.
you're Tri-Cities, you're Tri-Cities,
Tri-Cities.
you're Republic, you're
Where's
King
that?
City. Okay, next slide. Okay, so not in the budget. This is not in the budget. SB 1383 requires each city and county to procure 100% of their required procurement goals for 2025. Says currently, but we have been funding these costs through grants. We found out in the last 6 days, the day after the agenda went out, that we have actually run out of grant funding altogether. Since the cities are required, we will be, I guess, invoicing the cities for their portion of procurement through the end of June. So the funding options are, we can add an additional surcharge to collections to the additional AB 939 fees to help fund this procurement. Or we can direct budgeting for each member agency to fund it through their operating fund. Next slide. So during the EC, President Silva asked for what each city's procurement amount would be. So this is an estimate. So Salinas, 256,000, Soledad, 40,000, King City, 24,000, Gonzalez, 14,000, Greenfield, 30,000. And the county for this side would be 65,000. So 430,000. So what that would mean, and I apologize because for AB 939 fees get reallocated by tonnage, this doesn't quite total up. So we're gonna skip this slide and go to the estimated rating. So this would be the total increase. So budget that I presented along with an additional 430,000 in AB 939. So we are now looking at what would be, and this slide is new, we added it this morning. Looking at, depending on what service level you're district, between 1.6 and 2.2% of the budget. So with that, we will leave it on the screen so everyone could absorb what those increase would look like. And I'm happy to answer any questions on the budget or the money side. And Patrick and Mandy will answer anything on SB 1383 procurement.
Thank you. Do any of the board members have questions related to what's just been presented? Jose?
Question. I remember at the previous meeting, Supervisor Lopez had kind of asked for clarification on whether if it was going to be a surcharge, if it could be like a separate line item.
He could. Unfortunately, the way our billing and the contracts with the haulers work, there's only specific items we can increase. So it would require redoing all the contracts that have a separate line item at this point in time. So the only way to do it is to allocate it to AB 939, which is allowed through the franchise haulers.
And then any increase do we notify the ratepayers of this ahead of time?
Yes, so what happens is, what I need is direction from the board on how to build a final budget so we can bring it to the EC in 2 weeks and the board in 4 weeks. So what happens is we schedule a rate hearing for our rates at the March board meeting. And then that gives the haulers final information on what our rates are, and they start building their rate packages to the city, which is due to city staff in April for most places, which schedules city hearings in May or June to approve those rates, and then that'll include their hauler rates and city franchise fees and any other increases that are in there. So yes, the haulers, once they're approved by the cities, will notify all of the ratepayers that those increases will be coming.
Okay. And then would each individual jurisdiction negotiate that contract change to include that line item, or would that be something that?
I'm gonna defer to Patrick on that one.
Yeah, so there's several ways to do this. I'm gonna bring Chris Lopez into this discussion. This is another unfunded mandate by the state. It's part of the SB 1383 regulations. Requires to divert organics, but it also requires each of your cities, each of our jurisdictions, to procure a certain amount of that end product, mulches or compost. So you have to buy it or provide a subsidy for the purchase of that material. So as Mandy said, we've been doing that under grants from the state that sort of gave us some of that money back temporarily to sort of ease the burden into it. But now this is the first year where you have to meet your 100% target. And that's based on population and some magic numbers that the state has created that we'll talk about at a later date. But we're hopeful we'll be changing those so it'll be less of a burden. But right now, the only way to really fund this is one, you can fund it out of your general fund or other funds within the city's budget system, city and county budget system. Two, you could go back and amend your hauler's contract and recover it through your hauler, but they're just going to turn around and give it to you, and you're going to turn around and maybe give it back to us because we've been administering the program and doing all the paperwork for it, because it's our contractor who's actually making the product and then reselling it on your behalf to other customers. Or the third way, which we think is the easier way, is we'll just collect the money through the AB 939 program as a separate, it'll be a separate line item that will keep that money separate from the other funds. And then we'll just pay that procurement cost directly to the buyers or through through our processor to pay them to in turn use that as a discount for people buying it on your behalf. So you'll meet that procurement requirement that way. This is the simpler way. There's less transitions of money moving around, but can do it either way. It's just, this is the simpler way to do it, but it requires that we go ahead and add this in at the last minute. We were hoping the grant money would last till the end of the fiscal year. Unfortunately, the hauler or the processor had a huge sale in January, which is abnormal. They sold way more material, which is good because it means you've already met 20-25% of your procurement goal for 2025 in the first month of the year, because they sold a lot of material to clear their debts. The bad news is that huge sale ate up what was left of the grant. So there's two pieces to this. There is the procurement that the cities are going to have to fund between now and June 30th, right? Whatever they sell, the city, they're going to be selling it on your behalf to meet your procurement requirement. July 1st going forward, we're proposing that we will cover that money through the AB 939 funding. And that'll cover you into the future. We'll do that. It'll just be part of our normal budget every year. No matter how we do it, the ratepayers are going to have to pick that cost up, either through your taxes, your general fund, or through your hauler's rates, or through our AB 939 fees. So
I can call the item SB 1383 unfunded mandate. I mean, I'll call it out on the budget, just it will show up every year without a report. So, but yeah, so unfortunately, there is no way to show it in the customer's bill as a separate item as of now.
I have a couple questions. One is on this topic, one is not. So I'll stay on this topic. Have those options for the procurement, have they been presented to like the Salinas Valley Mayors and Managers group, just so that the city managers can take a look at it to give some input?
They have not been presented to that group, but I have talked with most of the staff in each of your cities. And because they've never had to deal with the program, we do it on all your behalfs. They are more in the court of adding it to the AB 939 fees, because this would be a lot more additional admin work that they haven't been having to do. And if it all comes to us, then it's easier. We already have the agreement with Atlas Organics. I have a relationship with them, and we do all the AB 939 reporting, which this is a big portion of that, is tracking all of this information and then reporting that to the state every calendar year. That's why we're a little off, but everyone operates on a fiscal year budget. So the short answer is no, we have not, but we're open to making a presentation if you think that's necessary.
I can tell you that your mayor told us this morning to figure out a way to make it part of the rates. So
Your city manager.
your city manager, sorry.
Yeah, and that's what I figured. I mean, that is the easiest, but it's always nice to get that input. So I mean, that's a good data point to have for us. Thank you.
And we also have a TAC, we have the 1383 Technical Advisory Committee, which includes all the city managers and staff. So a lot of the city managers have been in those conversations off and on for the last couple of years. So none of this is new. The only thing that's new is the fact that we used up the grant way faster than we thought. We thought we had another few more months left of grant money.
All right, thank you. And then a question on another topic. The work comp. So does our work comp, does it renew on July 1st?
Yes.
And has our experience modification, has it been reviewed and updated since?
Not yet, but we had a couple of large losses. They go back 3 years when they review them. And our XMOD has gone from 79% to 140%, unfortunately, in the last 2 years because of those losses. So we are expecting it to go up one more year. And then hoping that next year, when the second of those large losses drops off, we start working our way back down.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Yeah, I have on the slide, COLA 2.7 on the payroll increase. What is that COLA is?
It's cost of living adjustment.
Adjustment, okay.
So yeah, so it's part of the MOU contracts.
Okay, and then another question, no, he already asked it, so that's fine. That's all.
Any other questions from board members? I have one, if they don't. Just want to make sure, is the 150,000 on that resolution that we approved tonight, is that reflected in the CIP for this fiscal year? Because
No.
you gave some numbers.
No,
tonight on
and
that.
this is next year's budget. So that is a one-time project. So we tend to use,
So that doesn't adjust the budget?
that does not adjust this budget at all.
Oh. Even though.
It will adjust the bottom line. Yes, sorry.
Okay.
The year-over-year
That's what I'm
comparison.
saying, the 24-25.
Yes, the 24-25 would go from, now I need to redo my budget again. Okay, the 24-25 would go from a 497 surplus to a 347.
Okay. All right. No other questions? Then we will need action. Do we need action to pass?
Well,
this?
I need direction.
Just direction.
I need direction to schedule a rate hearing, and then I need to know if the board is okay with us moving forward with the last slide, which includes the 430,000 for procurement.
I have to ask for public comment first, Jane. So let me ask for public comment on this topic. Is there anyone in the public who has something to add to this? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. What did you say that you needed?
So I need direction to schedule the rate hearing and budget adoption for March. But I also need to know which budget to bring forward, to bring the one presented or the one that includes the additional 430,000 for the procurement. So option,
For the,
yes, so so option one is what I've been presenting for 4 weeks, and option two is the very last slide that includes procurement.
okay,
Increasing the 8939 fees by 430.
430.
By 641,000, so it's 211 plus 430.
Okay. Everybody got that? So do we just need a consensus for this? Everybody shaking their head up and down, up and down, up and down. Yes?
What's the consensus?
Yeah. Just a direction. Just the direction. Yeah.
It's the green for issue rates that you can mark.
Yes.
And the budget with
To include,
Second, yeah.
Increase to 430,000.
Yes.
Yes?
yes,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
we will. The EC one's gonna be wrong, but I'll make sure it's correct for the base.
We will see it again, or we will see it again. Poor guy.
Glenn really wants to memorize it, you know. Now we threw new numbers at you, Glenn. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority 5 and 10-year strategic look ahead.
All right, well, welcome to the last item of the open session. So I'm gonna start this. This is the last piece of our last strategic planning objectives. And it was really to come back and have a 5 and 10-year look at it. What are the headwinds? What are the things that we're going to be facing in the next 5 to 10 years? I've actually expanded that. This is probably the next 50 years, but most of them is 5 to 10 years. And I haven't put it into a time frame. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we actually get into strategic planning, but this is really the segue into strategic planning. So we're going to start with what we know is in our future. So we have a whole bunch of things we know are going to come in our industry. A lot of these are things actually that will affect you as cities and counties. You'll have the same experiences. Things like induced growth induced change, right? More people, more houses, more traffic. Those things have the same effect on us: more garbage, more recycling, more activities. And of course, we have climate change. Climate change affects all of us. It's going to be affecting our industry as well. We're going to have hotter days, larger storms. Those have impacts on any solid waste operation, from the collections to the landfill operation itself. As you heard tonight, a lot of stuff around unfunded mandates. California is notorious for pushing the environmental sustainability envelope. And with that comes a lot of unfunded mandates and new costs and new challenges. So we have regulatory, there's health changes and upgrades in health regulations, as well as safety regulations. All these things impact us. There's political change. You know, the political dynamics, both at the state, federal, and local level, can influence the directions and how agencies operate. So we have those things we'll be facing in the future. We have recessions. This agency went through a recession when I started here. Was at the beginning of the last major recession. And like everybody else, we struggled, had some rough times. We had to dip into reserves for everyday operations, which is not a good financial practice, but we've solved that. We'll talk about that in a second. Natural disasters, huge. This is something that we always ignore, we never talk about, but solid waste operations are massively impacted by natural disasters. We have one that just happened down in LA. We had 2 major fires down there. And at the same time, just before those fires, there was one of the largest regional landfills serving the entire LA waste shed that closed down for environmental reasons because they were being sued by a neighborhood because it had a chemical reaction going on inside their landfill that was causing people to get sick. But that's one part of it. But the other part of it is LA lost one of their major landfills to deal with their waste. And when that fire hit, it is producing a ton of waste. That waste is now being shipped to one of the only other large landfills in the LA basin. And the neighborhoods down there are now trying to stop the trucks. They're protesting. They're starting to file lawsuits. They don't want to see that toxic fire waste coming to their land. You know, these are mega landfills. It's not much larger than the site of ours, because they serve the LA basin. So natural disasters and preparing for those is actually a very important aspect for all of us to think about regionally. And then we have really other things coming, new technologies. This agency has been a leader in technology research for many, many years. You know, other ways to manage our waste outside of just putting it in landfill. And there's the inevitable, what happens when our landfill runs out of money? Are we going to expand the landfill? We're going to buy a new landfill. We're going to site one someplace else. And we'll talk a little bit about that history. Next slide, please. So I want to refer to those first few slides as Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority, Volume 1. You know, this is a relatively young agency in the sense of time. We were formed in 1997. And we were born in debt. So when this agency was formed, we received 4 landfills: Johnson Canyon Landfill, Lewis Road Landfill up in North County, and Buffalo Road Landfill outside of King City. Those were all either owned or controlled by the county, as well as the Crazy Horse Landfill in Fruitendale, which was the city of Salinas' landfill. And so all those landfills came into the authority. It was a collective decision by all the member agencies to get together and form a regional agency. Otherwise, that was a joint powers authority. We're not a special district. And I like to, for education purposes, tell people the difference between a special district and a joint powers authority is we're actually a department in all of your jurisdictions. So we're your solid waste department. Special district sort of is a little more legally standalone. We operate the same way, but legally we're structured a little bit differently. And so when that happened, we got all these landfills. They had lots of violations. I think we had 191 violations when the authority was first formed. And so in the early years, when we got those landfills and all the liabilities, well, the two member agencies that brought those into the authority didn't have a lot of money set aside and all that. So the authority had to do a lot of bonding. Certainly, we didn't have revenue, we didn't have reserves. We didn't even start building reserves until about 12 years really. Because we really had a lot of debt. We were just trying to work ourselves out of the hole. And so the good news is, through the diligence of the board and the staff and the collaborative work we've done in the last 15 years, the authority went from being having a net position of almost $12 million in the hole, meaning the value of the authority. That's in the early years. We had a lot of debt and a lot of compliance issues and not enough, just barely enough revenue to just keep things operating, to now having $40 million net position, which is healthy. It's not great, but it's healthy. And so we're in a really good position now, and it's taken us a lot of years to get to where we are. So that's why I want to say this is volume one. We've sort of closed out those early years and gotten the authority in a position where we're financially sustainable, operationally sustainable, and delivering consistent services. Next slide, please. So in 2002, we did a regional EIR, environmental impact report. You heard the phrase CEQA, that's the California Environmental Quality Act. There's a state regulations that mandate that we do environmental studies for any kind of major projects we do in our communities. The landfill being a major project. In that year, we looked at really the authority system, 2,400 square miles that we service from Santa Cruz, Santa Clara County lines all the way down to San Luis Obispo County. And how do we set up a system with all these assets? We have landfills, transfer stations. And so really the focus was on where are we going to end up with our, where are we going to regionalize our landfill? The decision was to have a single landfill, eventually end up with just a single regional landfill, which is what we have now. And to have transfer stations, both in the north and the southern part of the county, to serve the full geographic area, which we have is fairly large. We also spent a lot of time studying new waste processing and recovery technology. So here's talk about things like autoclaves, gasification, which is technology that the authority explored very deeply back 10, 15 years ago. But I think one of the most important parts for the authority is that we adopted a very significant set of sustainable budgeting and financial policies. We have a priority now in our financial policies that we have a fund balance at the end of the calendar year, end of the fiscal year. We first pay off any unfunded actuarial liability pension. All of us have had that, and some of us have a lot of it. And the way you look at it is, if you're going to pay off a bond, your bond's probably 4 or 5%, but your PERS unfunded liability, that was 7%, now it's 6.8%. That's a pretty high interest loan, because it really is just like a loan. You're paying that return that PERS would have made had you fully funded your pension liability. So that's one of our highest priorities, is to pay down the most expensive liability we have. That's the PERS you may own. We've also got fully funded operations reserve now, which is actually, sorry, it was fully funded at 15%. Last year, the board agreed to raise it to 20% and to think about raising it to 25%, which we'll talk about later on in the year. But right now, we're building up that next 5%, and we're going to be there in another year or two. That'll be fully funded. We have an operating liability reserve. Landfills have a lot of environmental liability. smart to have operating capital sitting in the background if you have something major. That could be a fire, that could be a failure of a landfill, or a slope fails. Something, landfills are an environmental liability. You know, manage them correctly, and that this gives us a background. There's actually a state law that requires that we evaluate what is the worst case scenario in each of our landfills that could happen environmentally, and to make sure we either pledge that money or we actually have it on hand in the event one of those catastrophic events happens. We also have a capital projects reserve. Again, and then equipment replacement reserve. As you heard from Ray, we save as we go for things like capital projects and for replacing our very expensive yellow line in fleet vehicles. Next slide, please. And so the final pieces of this, what I would call volume one, you've heard a little bit of that tonight. Obviously, Crazy Horse Transfer Station. This came out of the 2002 EIR. The authority's goal and plan 20 years ago was to have a regional landfill, which we selected as Johnson Canyon, being in the center of the county. And Johnson's in a good spot for a landfill. I won't speak for Gonzales, being the next door to it, but for landfills, this is as good a place as you're going to find in the county in terms of access, but still being in an area that's far enough away from other impact areas. So it's a regional landfill, and then we intended to have a north and a south county transfer station. We had one in Salinas for many years. That's now been closed. It's on the market for sale right now, that property. And the Crazy Horse landfill makes the most sense for us because we already own that property. It's a place we can do that. And it did serve the city of Salinas. It did serve the north part of the county for 70 plus years. It's closed and then out of space. So that project is obviously one of our center pieces. Permanent upgrades to our transfer station in Malone Road. That work was completed this year with the repaving of the access road, almost a mile of access road that had never been redone in our ownership period and was badly in need of it, as well as in closing that operation. It used to be an open air transfer station as well. So that's been completed. Crazy Horses in the works. And then eventually we want to really improve the entrance operations at Johnson Canyon. Right now it's crowded. Cars back up onto the street, which they're not supposed to. So we want to relocate the entrance, create a better recycling center, and just create the ability to have more cars queuing inside the site. So that's the third of those projects Ray talked about earlier. So with those, that really sort of completes the infrastructure that the agency anticipated in 2002. And that sort of puts us at the finale of what I would call volume one. So let's talk just briefly about the other sort of things we see coming. Next slide, please. So climate change. So obviously climate change is a big issue. So we're going to need to prepare as the future goes forward. And this could be 10 years, 20 years down the road. So ultimately things like expanding our stormwater system. It's anticipated storms will get bigger. Our system may need to be expanded at some point in the future to be able to accommodate larger storms. Storms are based on a 100-year storm, but 100-year storms they're starting to say now are like 25-year storms, which means a 100-year storm might be what they would call a 5-year storm. So those are changing numbers and changing meteorological projections. We know we're going to impact the design of our stormwater management system. Fire risks, storm risks. We've all seen the fires, we've seen the storms. We get a lot of wind in the valley. Always cognizant about fire. So again, as the earth heats up, that increases that risk as well. And then of course staff, health and safety staff. When it's really hot out there, we have to take extra special measures for our staff, give them more breaks, more shade areas, bring them water, popsicles, whatever it takes if it's a really hot day. And also wind. The valley is very windy, and working on top of the landfill on a windy day is stressing on employees. That will get worse in the future, and we'll have to make adaptations to that as well. Next slide, please. Regulatory and health change, you've heard a lot about 1383 today. That's a huge piece of unfunded, I think means well in terms of the states tend to create systems that remove organics from landfill so we don't produce methane. I think we'll all equally agree that as tension as it is, it's absolutely difficult regulatory framework to work in. And it changes constantly, and it's got a lot of problems in it that are still today trying to be solved with the legislators. So the original language was rough, and it's been rough on all of us in this industry. But we're working through it. That's going to keep growing. The requirements behind that are going to continue to evolve over time. We have new changes in managing landfill gas. Organic material in landfills produces methane. There's a lot of changes going on right now about landfill methane reduction. That's LMR. We now have a satellite sitting right above us. It's looking down at special equipment that can tell if our landfill is emitting methane. And right now it's focusing on the state of California, but it will eventually be focusing across the US. So it's looking at landfills, oil fields, cattle yards, places where there's a lot of concentration of organic materials that can create methane. So we'll be regulated in the sky going forward. So that's going to create a lot of pressure on our management system. Brian, his staff who do all that monitoring and manage those systems. So a lot of organic emission control process changes will be coming. There will be changes in technology, and very likely the state will be requiring landfills to put those technologies in place. That will cost money. Again, those are things that will be coming. I think you've all probably heard by now about the magic phrase PFAS and PFOA. PFAS is a series of chemicals. This room is probably full of it. You probably have some on your clothes. We all have it in our bloodstreams and our livers. It is a forever chemical that is very prevalent in consumer products for the last 40 or 50 years. Primarily fire retardant. Used to be in a lot of clothing to make their clothing fire retardants and computers, technology, equipment. And the unfortunate part with that is that the regulations coming out and the health determinations, it's very microscopic amounts. We're talking parts per trillion, quadrillion, levels that you can't even treat, but they're saying cause health effects, which means anybody that has it, that generates it, is going to get really heavily regulated going forward. Unfortunately, landfills and wastewater treatment plants are what we call concentration points. We don't generate, we didn't create the PFAS, but it shows up in everything you throw away. All your computer plastics, all have it in it. If you're, it's just in so many different products, it's in everything you throw away. And so it ends up in our leachate, ends up, and potentially could end up even in the landfill gas, leaving recycling. So that's an upcoming set of regulations that we still don't quite know what it means yet, but we know it's coming. We don't even know how to treat it yet. There's not really good, cost-effective ways to treat it because it's a very difficult chemical to destroy, except with extreme heat. So that's coming. So some of this is bad news, but we'll get to the good stuff in a minute, I promise you. Next one, please. Of course, political change can be both positive and negative. I'm not going to get into a discussion about politics, only that we've seen in our years here, and I think all of you that have been in politics understand that your cities, your jurisdictions, directions can change with a changing council or a changing political viewpoint. So there's always things we have to be fluid in our adaptation about how we address the changes for making the board members. So those are things really just that we need to be aware of. But also political change affects us from up down, right? The federal level, the state level, changes in those regulations and the perspective of the people in charge at the state or federal level can also trickle down and cause changes to us, both positive and negative. Next slide, please. Economic recession. I won't spend a lot of time on this other than to say all the financial policies we now have in place that are that are ingrained in the authority budgeting process are specifically designed around this. Because solid waste does not stop. The recession, it slows down, it doesn't stop. 8939 programs or state mandated programs. We gotta fund those every year, even when the recession's down, I still have to run those programs because they're required by law. And so all the reserves we've done, all the reserve work and the policies and the smart budgeting we've done, we're in a good, much better position now than we were back in 2009 to weather a recession. And even in a fairly good recession. I think we spent $3 million out of reserves during the recession. It's $2 million 1 year and $1 billion the next year. I think. $2 million 1 year, yeah, $1 million. We started working on the 89. So we've got a good operating reserve, which would help us weather it. And if we decide in the next few months we want to even elevate that to say 25%, that's a really good stopgap. Was the worst scenarios we could imagine in a recession. Next slide, please. And the natural disasters, I touched on that a few moments ago. Natural disasters, I think we're going to start talking internally a little bit about how do we address that. If there's a major fire here, fire waste, people concerned about it. Houses burn, there's all kinds of things. Well, communities don't want to see that come to them. It's got to go somewhere. You can't leave it. Can't bury it in place. So natural disasters, preparing for the influx of material to a facility. What is our master plan for an earthquake? I went through an earthquake in Santa Cruz County when I lived there, and worked at the EOC, and I saw firsthand what a major disaster is. And it was scary. The amount of waste was coming in. We had no plan how to deal with it. Stuck. Buildings that had fallen down. We'd taken debris and it just stockpiled if we could put it in the landfill fast enough. So talking about how we prepare for major storms, fires, earthquakes, floods, those kind of things that might impact communities. Very important part of our advanced planning. I think that we're going to really want to start focusing on it. Next slide, please. And then the last couple slides, new technologies. Again, we've talked a little bit about this. We've looked at gasification, which is a thermal process that basically almost eliminates the need for landfill, but it's not attractive to the communities. We had an advocacy group come in here, convince everybody here was incineration, everybody was going to get very sick from it. Gasification is a completely different technology. It's very well accepted in European and Asian countries. But nonetheless, that is the environment we work in. And it's unfortunate we weren't able to move forward with it, but we learned a lot. And then, of course, autoclaving, that's ways to mine materials out of the garbage through steam separation, and then other types of advanced material recovery. These are all technologies, things that we're going to continue to look at to try to get more material out of the landfill, make that landfill last as long as. Next slide. And finally, this is really the big one. And this is something I want to just touch on tonight only from a timing perspective. So we have about 40 years left lying in Johnson Canyon, assuming we keep recycling at the rate we're at today, find some new advanced technology that makes that space last longer. So landfills in the state of California or jurisdictions all have to have, by law, you have to have 15 years of landfill capacity at all times, minimum. 15 is the minimum, can't go below that. And that's either through your own landfill, right, or regional landfill that we have, or through contracts with some other regional landfill that give you at least 15 years of capacity. So you have to have that capacity at all times. So if you take the process and you go backwards, well, we got 40 years to take 15 off. It gives you 20. That's a 25-year planning period. or finding capacity, either through expanding an existing landfill, finding a new landfill, or finding another regional landfill that's willing to take your garbage for some extended period of time. The reality in California is we're not building new landfills. We're expanding some landfills. That's about the best we've done. We're not building new ones. This agency actually went through the process of trying to build a new landfill on a new site on Highway 198 about 20 years ago. And the threats of lawsuits stopped the authority. So the reality is we have a regional landfill. It's going to serve us for 40 years, but the process of planning for its replacement, wherever that may be, it's not too soon to start having that conversation. We don't want to do what San Benito County just did. And that's they got themselves back up against the wall because they were importing so much garbage. They ate up all their landfill capacity. And all of a sudden they had 15 years and they had to stop importing garbage. Their revenue, their revenue fell through the floor. And they came out and started asking everybody around them, hey, can you take our garbage? They talked to us, Rob and I, staff, Caesar met with them to talk about it. We were offering capacity. We talked to them long term. Maybe there's something we can talk about. But in the short term, we're not going to give you 40 years. We imported garbage from South Santa Clara County for about 10 years. We convinced the board to stop doing that in 2014 and preserve what landfill capacity we have for just for this community, and that's what we do now. That was a smart decision. But 40 years would go by, none of us will be here at the table when that happens. I think maybe Rob will. But the discussion around securing our long-term capacity and how we do that is something that we need to start sooner later. Because, buying new land or expanded land, if it has Williamson Act on it, for instance, that's a 10-year process by itself. So now you're down to 15 years. And permitting a landfill or an expanded landfill can be a 10 to 20-year process. Easily. And so it's time to start having that conversation going forward. Okay. Exciting. So that's your primer tonight for volume 1 and the outline for volume 2 of the authority. Our intent is when we have our first strategic planning meeting is to sort of highlight these things and sort of talk about what are our highest priorities and start to build our strategic plan around what we see coming in the future. Because we've really gotten most of the things that we've been doing in the last few years of strategic planning have gotten, they're pretty administrative. We can keep doing that, but I think this is more important for the agency going forward, is that we really start to look at these bigger ticket issues, because these are going to take up our time, our money, and it's going to require a lot of engagement with the public as well. So at this point, I'm open to any kind of feedback you might have. We're not really asking for any direction tonight necessarily, but if there are things that you want to add to this, any additional comments you want to provide, that would be great. As soon as you see things are important, you want to highlight, that's great. We'll make sure that those are highlighted when we come back for strategic planning.
Thank you, Patrick. Take it out to the board. Any board member have any comments? Glenn?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I hadn't really thought about how natural disasters fill things up. And so thinking of everything that burned down in LA, and then you also lose in the landfill. That's a double whammy. Curious on these new technologies here. I thought thermal treatment might be something a little more advanced than just burning, but I guess that's pretty much what it is, essentially, isn't it?
No, gasification is actually not burning.
It isn't. Okay, well, that's why I misunderstood you then.
Yeah.
I thought you did say that there was burning.
Well, it's thermal. It's
Okay.
heat. It's based on heat. Incineration is burning. That's in the presence of oxygen. And so when you burn garbage to generate heat, to make steam, drive turbines, those kind of things, you end up with a exhaust plume that has a lot of toxics in it. And you have a very expensive back end to treat that air system. You have a very expensive. Whereas gasification you are actually subjecting waste materials to an extremely high temperature, much higher than an incinerator do. And it's in an enclosed vessel, and it's with either the absence of oxygen or a very limited amount of oxygen. And what it does is it actually, instead of burn, it's hard to explain it without a chemistry lesson, but you basically break that material down into its element, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen. Right, because when you burn something, you get CO2, you get soot, you get, a whole bunch of different things that come out of it. When you burn it at such a high temperature, it completely disassociates the chemical down to elements. Now what you have is building blocks, chemical building blocks that you can use to make anything. You can make diesel fuel out of it, you can make natural gas out of it. You can actually burn it. It produces what's called syngas, which is basically hydrogen and carbon monoxide. Those two things together, when you burn them, extremely clean. And because it's so hot, all the heavy metals drop out and turn into a slag. Sulfur can drop out, you get all the sulfur out of it. It's a very clean technology. It's not the same as incineration. And so it's very advanced. And again, we're seeing it's a lot. It's happening in Europe, happening in Asia. It's become commonplace. It's replaced incinerators, but it's also still has a stigma attached to it.
And the cost of something like that?
Well, the company we had that had bid on our contract, we had done an authority had done a procurement for technology called Convergent Technologies. And the company that the authority selected was out of Canada. And they were willing to do it for $70 a ton. That's unheard of because incineration is double that. The other companies, but they had gotten renewable energy credit approval from the state. It was really a big deal. We were excited about it, but it just got bogged down.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other one I wasn't clear on was waste mining.
Well, I put that up there just as an example. Some people have tried to go back into landfills and mine them, pull out usable items. It's pretty nasty. The material is fairly degraded. The attempts I've seen people do, they've tried to do it in Watsonville on a pilot, and it just ended up being so expensive, and the return on it was just pretty minimal. Doesn't mean there won't be a new technology down the road that could cover that material and convert it back into usable, metals and silica slags, things that could be used, but it's still an option to consider. And someone may come up with a new idea, let's make it viable.
All right, and my last question was, I just got curious, because we were talking here about these lithium batteries catching on fire, and of course we separate the lithium from everything, correct? Or how do we deal with lithium when it comes in?
Well, we do recycle lithium batteries.
We recycle.
Yeah.
Right, and so, and that's on batteries, okay, and that goes out. So my particular question here, because I have a new interest in lithium batteries in the last month or so, is what Cal Fire Chief was mentioning to me, and I'm just kind of wondering if we have faced a situation like this, is where he was describing to me how when something like a Tesla catches on fire, that they just may try to smother it or put the fire out. They know it could reignite, with foam, a blanket, something, or water or whatever. But they have to get it on a tow truck as quick as possible. And then they haul it up like to San Jose, where they'll take it and they put it in a hole. And the reason they put it in the hole, and I think it's there for about 15 or 30 days because it could burn, but the reason they get it onto tow trucks so quick is because as it catches on fire, it can actually start driving off on its own, which is a great idea. So I just think, they take it up there, and I don't know if that's just where they put it temporarily or what, but those car fires do happen. Do we take something like that, or where does that go? I mean, what do you do with the car when it catches on fire like that?
And you got the small stuff goes out pretty quickly. We usually just smother it, right? If we can pull it out, we'll cover it with dirt, right? But we're talking small batteries. I mean, the biggest things we typically will see would be like a Ryobi drill battery, right, for a electrified or a battery operating power tool. That's usually the largest kind of battery. So we don't see car batteries usually. That's not a home improvement thing. It's usually done by a professional that knows how to handle those high voltage, large batteries, and those are being handled outside our system. To my knowledge, I have not heard that we have seen, I don't know if you heard anything, Ryan, you ever seen a battery the size of a car, you know, a hybrid battery. They're all small batteries. And a lot of it, like the gentleman said earlier, there's a lot of stuff that's just disposable. People just throw them away. No matter how much we educate people, we still just take that big pen or that cheap little flashlight you guys swag at a conference. You know, I don't know how many of those I've got. And they got those little button batteries. Well, that's a lithium battery. That little tiny button battery is a lithium battery. And that technically could start a phone. It is not going to be, it's not going to look like Moss Landing. At best, it might be a little spot that smolders, right? Because garbage is typically wet. So it's never really, we've never had a conflagration. They're usually small, manageable things that we just handle with staff.
Well, where do they take those car batteries? Do you have any idea? I mean, there's a lot of them right around the county. They gotta go somewhere.
That would probably be a question to ask a dealership that sells hybrids or electric cars.
Yeah, I just curious. Yes, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we would intentionally not want to handle those anyway.
Are there any other questions from our board? Jose?
With Prop 4 recently passed the climate bond, or is there any other with Prop 4 being passed, the climate bond, or is there any opportunity for any of these future projects, particularly as it relates to climate resiliency, for us to tap into those funds?
Potentially, we're always looking at grant funding. We actually have a grant analyst in the office that manages your garbage contracts, and which also is our grants analyst, so she's constantly looking at grant opportunities. And we do get grants. You'll see them periodically, especially from the air district. We convert a lot of our vehicles to lower emission vehicles or into electric class and improve the new electric truck. So we're converting our fleet right now. So that's the kind of money that's coming through like the air district or through Cal Cycle. So, yeah.
And then there was a slide with a number of different reserves. At what rate do we currently have those reserves funded, and what's?
They're in the, you'll see them in the financial summary. Every month we have that, and you guys are having very.
We're gonna have a trilogy here. Are there any other questions from board members?
Yes.
Okay, I just have a comment. Thank you, Patrick, for the presentation and the slides. And you know, you keep asking my questions. So I'm just gonna say again, thank you for the detail and the slides. And I appreciate, you know, what he brought up is natural disasters is always unexpected. So we want to, and that's, you know, preparing this for being proactive. So it's good. So thank you.
Any other board members? I just have a comment, I think, more than anything, and that was, I think Ray just said it a little while ago to Glenn that about 15 years ago, the board was considering plasma arc gasification process that would have really reduced what we put into the landfill by a great amount. And I believe that well, the technology was, we did not take it, but I believe that Fort Hunter Liggett installed that type of technology to deal with their waste. Of course, the government doesn't have to go through all the hurdles we do, or we would have had to. But unfortunately, we had a lot of opposition. It came to a lot of meetings. And I attended a conference in Philadelphia with a former staff member. And it was very interesting because I believe that we could have benefited from it. I saw examples that were given in some of the European countries, because if you think we don't have a lot of land, they don't have anything. So they have to deal with it in a much broader sense than we do. And they had utilized the types of technology we were considering 15 years ago. And it's just too bad we couldn't have come to the Kumbaya that year. Because I think it really would have benefited us in the long term. We could have had a longer life than 40 years from now. We probably could have added another 50 years to the landfill. So thank you for the presentation. And is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this topic?
I'll keep these short because it's late in the meeting.
Okay, you got 3 minutes.
With regards to that European statement, I think, well, it's not too late. With regards to new and adding it, new technologies, you're gonna need like a lot of data. So maybe look into how, even those Europeans collect data, because you're gonna have new technology and someone's gonna be like, all right, what's the situation? You're like, well, we don't know. We don't know how these fires start. We just know they're batteries, and you got a software engineer looking at you like, okay, can't help you. So data collection is really important with that regards. With regards to Johnson Canyon, you guys, someone mentioned that they're redoing the entrance gate. For a consumer, whether like a person with a Malibu, right? It's hard to dump your stuff there. There's no apparent way to do it. Last time I did, they're like, oh, go up the hill, and the car was getting scratches on the dirt road. So just a comment, easier way for a regular person to dump their stuff and get them out there quickly because they don't have a big truck. And that's, it's closed session, so I'll get myself out of here. Thank you for your time and great presentations.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else from the public tonight? Seeing none, we'll bring it back and we don't wish for it. Just accept the vote.
Is it the agenda or looking?
We get it at a future date.
Yeah, so the agenda.
Yeah. So now, number 13 would be our agenda items, a look ahead. Patrick, we want to go through this?
Okay, get my version of this up so I can read it. There we go. All right, so coming up in March, we have, I think you heard most of that stuff tonight. I think a couple of the highlights. We're going to be opening bids for our charging stations to bring charging stations into the new office space for both ourselves as well as our other tenants in the other 2 suites. So we're hopeful that those bids will come in good next week, and we'll be able to come back to the board and award that and get some finality with the grant that we've received from the Air District. We'll have the hearings, obviously, for the rate schedule, as well as you'll hear for the 6th time, Glenn. Yes, hopefully Ray's abbreviated version of the budget presentation. You'll get the franchise haulers performance report, and you'll get the quarterly legislative update from myself as well.
Thank you.
And so if there's anything you'd like to add to the agenda, modify, change, you can let us know now, or you can let Erica or I know between now and the next board meeting.
Thank you. And before we adjourn into closed session, I'd like to receive any public comment from the audience with regards to the closed session item we have on the agenda tonight. Seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 to provide instruction to General Manager, CAO Patrick Matthews, and General Counsel Royce C. Santos to negotiate salaries and benefits with SVS WA employees, management, and non-management.
I was told that the acting vice president always on the right side of the dais, because you're her right.
We will reconvene now after closed session. Is there anything to report out?
No reportable actions at this time, Madam President.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. Moved and seconded to adjourn our meeting tonight. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. See you next month.